Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Thank you so much for joining me from Brussels. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can I just first start by asking you, all the allies were really concerned and nervous, hoping that this summit was not going to devolve into a debacle like the G7 summit did, with disunity and pulling out of communiques. How would you say you assess the unity and the success of this summit?
This has been a very good summit because actually we have had very open and frank discussions. There is no problem to have different views and open discussions as long as we're able to conclude and deliver decisions. And that's exactly what we have done. Yes, there have been different views. We are 29 allies discussing different issues, but we have also agreed on how to strengthen NATO with the high readiness of forces, stepping up the fight against terrorism, reforming our command structure, and not least we have agreed that we need to spend more. There is a new sense of urgency on the importance of investing more in our defense.
So let's take that issue, the new sense of urgency. President Trump, as we know, and we saw it publicly throughout the summit, keeps demanding this 2%. In fact, he even demanded more, up to 4%. He not only did that, he demanded more to happen almost immediately rather than by 2024, as you NATO allies have agreed. So first and foremost, has President Trump secured a pledge from NATO allies, as he said today, to immediately start spending more, up to 4%, or putting down a huge marker? He himself said $33 million more. Have the allies agreed specifically to figures demanded by the president today?
The allies have heard his message loud and clear, and his strong message on defense spending is having a real impact. Just since last time President Trump was here in Brussels at the NATO meeting last May, European allies and Canada have added $41 billion extra for defense funding. So we have turned the corner. Before the trend was down, now the trend is really going up. And all allies agree that we have to make good on the commitments we have made. We need to increase defense spending substantially, but also all allies agree that we need to stand united in NATO. So for me, this is a good summit because we all expressed our support to NATO, also the president, but also we all expressed our support to investing more in defense.
So let me be specific again. I want a clear answer from you, please. President Macron denies that the allies agreed to up their spending beyond the 2%. Can you confirm to us, what are the facts? We need to know the facts.
The fact is that we have a clear commitment to increase defense spending, and we all agreed that we have to deliver on that. There is a new sense of urgency on the importance of delivering that. But perhaps even more important is that we have actually started to invest more than 40 billion just since last year. And it is my task to make sure that we deliver, that we have a substantial increase in defense spending in the years ahead. And our work together with all allies, but also, of course, work closely with President Trump and his leadership, his strong message, is having a clear impact. Allies are increasing defense spending.
Which is what you said before. In fact, 100% of allies are increasing spending. You've said that it's up to about 5.2% collectively. My question to you is, are you being told now that you need to raise individual spending by 4% or more than 2%?
We have agreed that we need to make good on the pledges we have made. The problem has been before that, we have seen promises being made, but not always being followed up. Now we have to make sure that we follow up, that we implement, that we deliver. And I'm an optimist, partly because we have seen already that allies have started to increase. Last year was the biggest increase in a generation in defense spending across Europe and Canada, but also because I witnessed the discussion we had both yesterday and today at the NATO summit, and allies understand that we really need to step up and redouble our efforts. So I see both the decisions we have made, but also the common understanding we have about the importance of delivering.
So I'm going to take it from what you say that you are committed to 2% and nothing further at this time. Am I correct?
So we have a commitment to spend 2%. The important thing now is that we need to invest more, to get more money, and the good thing is that since very much because of the very clear message from President Trump on this meeting, I think that allies understand that there is a need to do that. There is an urgency, there is a sense of urgency when it comes to delivering on that commitment.
So can I ask you whether it is correct that President Trump said that he would make a decision, he would go it alone if he didn't get the commitments that he was demanding? Any kind of implication that the United States would pull back in any way whatsoever?
Well, as the president said himself, he didn't say that. He actually said that he is very committed to NATO, and I think the fact that we have made many important decisions on increased readiness, stepping up the fight against terrorism, new command structure, combined with more defense spending, makes NATO stronger. And we are more united because we had open and frank discussions. I think that actually helps us to really create a real unity in the alliance.
So can I just play a little back and forth that you and President Trump had during your morning meeting? And of course, it's all about what President Trump accused Germany of. He said, as you remember, because you were sitting opposite him, that Germany was captive, totally controlled by Russia because of a commercial natural gas pipeline that's been built and that was started, as you know, 15 years ago. This is the back and forth, and then I would like to get you to talk about it afterwards.
I think that two world wars and the Cold War taught us that we are stronger together than apart.
But how can you be together when a country is getting its energy from the person you want protection against or from the group that you want protection?
Because you understand that when we stand together, also when dealing with Russia, we are stronger. I think what we have seen is that...
No, you're just making Russia richer.
Well,
you're not dealing with Russia, you're making Russia richer.
So how did you take that? Did you find it to be apples and oranges? Did you think the president had a point about this pipeline? And obviously, what do you feel about accusing Germany of being controlled or captive to Russia?
There are very strong views and positions when it comes to the question of this new gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. And within NATO, there are nations with different positions. It's not for NATO to decide on gas pipelines. We are a defense alliance. I welcome the fact that President Trump and Chancellor Merkel sat down during the NATO summit. They had an open discussion about these issues, and they left each other agreeing that they all support NATO despite the disagreement on the gas pipeline. For NATO, what is important is that allies are focused on diversification of energy supplies, that we are not that we invest also in renewables, which can reduce the need to import energy, and that we also protect our energy infrastructure. But it's not for NATO to decide on specific energy projects. That's for nations to do.
So I was speaking to the former US ambassador to NATO, Victoria Nuland, and she's also written that this summit and then the summit with President Putin will either show America's commitment to leadership of the Western alliance, or it will kill off American leadership. She was very concerned by the sort of disarray that the meeting started with, the back and forth between you all over the breakfast. And she sort of suggested that this was music to Putin's ears, this discord, and that in her words to me, President Trump's sort of disruption of this alliance, for whatever reasons he wants to do that, leaves those on the opposite side of the fence, quote, drooling. Are you concerned about his position going into the meeting with Vladimir Putin?
President Trump has a different style. He is very direct, but I think also that has helped allies to really hear his message, especially on burden-sharing defense spending. I welcome the fact that he will meet with President Putin, because I have been strongly in favor of dialogue, or NATO is strongly in favor of dialogue with Russia. For us, dialogue is not a sign of weakness. Dialogue is a sign of strength. So as long as we are united and as long as we are firm in our approach to Russia, we should also sit down and talk to Russia. Partly to aspire for a better relationship with Russia, but even without the better relationship with Russia, we need to manage a difficult relationship with Russia. So when tensions are high, as they are now, it's even more important to talk. We have more military presence along our borders. We need to avoid incidents, accidents, miscalculations, and therefore we need military lines of communications and dialogue with Russia just to make sure that we try to keep tensions down and avoid incidents and accidents.
So let me just get your reaction to two things President Trump said during his press conference. One, that he was open to potentially considering permanent annexation of Crimea by Russia, that Russia's claim to own Crimea now, he could consider potentially accepting that. And two, that he might also consider calling a halt to the joint NATO exercises around the Baltics, those very important exercises there. What is your reaction to that?
Well, we had a very good meeting with President Poroshenko, where we reiterated our strong support to Ukraine, to the territorial integrity, to the sovereignty of Ukraine, and that, of course, includes Crimea. And all allies have expressed again and again that we do not and will not recognize the illegal annexation of Crimea. When it comes to exercises, actually what we do now is that we are exercising more together. I think we have to understand that the military presence of NATO forces and US forces together in NATO and US forces together in Europe, it's partly about protecting Europe, but Europe is also important for projecting stability beyond Europe into Middle East, Africa. So the US presence in Europe is also about power projection for the United States beyond Europe.
So just explain that for the sake of American voters, because President Trump is always saying that the Europeans, the allies, get much, much, much more out of NATO than the US does. You wrote an op-ed saying that you live in Brussels, not far from some of the bloodiest battlefields of World War II, and how that has convinced you of a number of issues in this regard. So what would you say to the American people about the value of NATO for them?
So NATO is important for Europe, but NATO is also important for North America and the United States, because NATO is an alliance that provides friendship, also 28 friends and allies of the United States, meaning that European soldiers and Canadian soldiers have been together with US soldiers on battlefields from Korea in the 50s, Afghanistan and Iraq today. And the presence of US forces in Europe helps to protect Europe, but is also the platform that the United States has used to project power into the Middle East or Africa. The US Africa Command is in Europe. So Europe is important also beyond the US presence of military forces in Europe is important also to address crisis far beyond Europe. Then there are forces, infrastructure, bases, intelligence in Europe, which also help to protect the United States. So we are together, and as long as we are together, we are safe and secure. NATO allies together represent half of the world's military might and half of the world's economic might. So as long as we are together, we are able to deal with any potential threat and challenge.
Secretary General, thank you so much. Just one last one before I go. Can you just give me a yes or no? Have NATO allies agreed to a 4% share of their GDP for military spending? Have they agreed to up it from 2 to 4%?
We have agreed to make good on the commitments we have made, meaning increasing defense spending substantially, and there is a new sense of urgency and new money is coming in. Just since Trump was here last time, more than 40 billion has come in from European allies and Canada.
Thank you so much for joining us from Brussels, NATO headquarters, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.